This is a story about a text message that changed everything. Not in a big, dramatic movie way, but in the kind of quiet, confusing way that makes your stomach turn over and over again, even months later. I was 20, living in the shadiest, best apartment near campus with my roommate, Alex. Alex was fine, a typical messy college guy, obsessed with late-night gaming and cheap pizza. But this story isn't about Alex. It's about his older sister, Chloe. Chloe was the kind of person you barely registered until she walked into a room, and suddenly, she was all you could see. She was 2 years older than us, a photography major who lived in an apartment a few floors above ours in the same building. She was mostly a ghost, only showing up to borrow Alex's car or drop off a laundry basket. We exchanged maybe 5 words a week, tops. Hey, thanks, see ya. Completely unremarkable. That's what made what happened next so completely, utterly weird. It was a Tuesday night, about 1:30 a.m. I was supposed to be studying for an economics midterm, but I was actually scrolling through old high school photos, deep in that unproductive, late-night nostalgia spiral. Alex was passed out on the couch, surrounded by energy drink cans and controller cables. The apartment was quiet, just the distant sound of traffic outside. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't just a regular notification, it was that specific, urgent buzz I only got from texts. I picked it up, expecting it to be a late-night study group question, or maybe my mom asking if I'd eaten vegetables that week. The contact name was Chloe, Alex's sister. I barely even knew I had her number saved. I hadn't added it. Alex must have put it in my phone months ago. My brow furrowed. Why was she texting me? And why at this hour? I tapped the screen, and the text message filled the screen. It was one short, perfectly clear sentence. No emojis, no context, just 4 words that made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. Come upstairs, but don't knock. My first thought was that something terrible had happened. Maybe Alex had left the stove on and her apartment was filling with smoke. Maybe she'd fallen and needed help. But then I looked at the way she phrased it, the don't knock part. That wasn't a cry for help. That was a request for secrecy. It felt like an invitation to a conspiracy, a silent agreement before I even knew the terms. I glanced over at Alex's sleeping form. He looked harmless, innocent, completely oblivious to whatever was happening just a couple of floors above his head. 1,000 possibilities flashed through my mind, each one crazier than the last. Was she locked out? Was she trying to pull a prank? Or was it something way more complicated, something I was about to get pulled into without knowing the consequences? My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought Alex might wake up. I knew I shouldn't go. I knew it was a terrible idea to get involved in any late-night secret involving my roommate's older sister. But that text, simple and demanding, had already snagged my attention like a fishing hook. The hallway light was off, making the trip up 2 flights feel like walking into a black hole. I took one last look at Alex, sighed, and slipped my phone into my pocket. My hand was already on the doorknob. What I didn't know was that the reason she told me not to knock had absolutely nothing to do with Alex being asleep, and everything to do with who was waiting on the other side of that door. I pulled the door shut behind me, making sure the old lock clicked silently. Walking up those concrete steps felt less like ascending 2 floors and more like crossing some invisible line. Up until that night, my relationship with Chloe existed entirely in the peripheral vision of my friendship with Alex. Alex and I had been friends since high school chemistry class, the kind of easy, default relationship where you just knew the other person would always be there. He was my anchor in this massive, overwhelming university environment. Chloe, though, she was different. Alex often talked about her, mostly complaining about her messy habits or her art school pretentiousness. But sometimes, a real warmth would slip into his voice, the kind of fierce, protective loyalty only a little brother has. She was his older sister, his first protector, and apparently, his primary antagonist. Because of that, I always kept a respectful distance. She was Alex's business, not mine. Besides, Chloe had this magnetic, yet incredibly guarded, presence. Whenever she was around, she was usually on her way somewhere, carrying a heavy camera bag or rushing out the door. She was always focused on something far away, something beyond our grubby little world of instant noodles and failed exams. The closest I'd ever gotten to a real conversation with her was the time she caught me trying to fix the jammed coin slot on the laundry machine in the building basement. She didn't laugh, She just stood there, her arms crossed, watching my pathetic struggle. Then, without a word, she reached past me and jiggled the mechanism with a key she pulled off her keyring, freeing my quarters. "Always keep an apartment key on you," she'd said, her voice low and just a little gravelly. "They're stronger than you think." It was cryptic advice, but it stuck with me. It made her seem like she knew all the secrets of this old building, and maybe all the secrets of the world. That night, walking up to her door, that single memory was all I had to go on. A girl who was both guarded and surprisingly capable, asking for silent, urgent help. The thought that she would text me and not Alex, her actual brother, the one she supposedly trusted, was the biggest piece of the puzzle. It meant whatever was happening, it couldn't involve Alex. And that made the whole situation feel heavy, potentially volatile. Was she in trouble with a deadline? Was it a roommate issue? Or was it something far more personal and deep? I stopped outside her door. I didn't raise my hand to knock, of course. I just stood there, my ear maybe an inch from the wood, listening for any sign of movement, any noise at all. Silence. The hall was poorly lit, the air stale. My heart was still pounding, but now it was slowing, giving way to a cold dread. I didn't know what to do next. Was I supposed to text her back? Wait for her to open the door? Just as I was about to turn around and chalk the whole thing up to a weird, sleep-deprived mistake, I heard a faint, strange sound from inside the apartment. It wasn't a voice or a dropped item. It sounded exactly like someone was very, very carefully locking a door from the inside. But not her door. It sounded like the lock to a bedroom door. The sound of that second lock clicking into place inside Chloe's apartment was like a shot fired in the quiet night. It threw me completely off balance. If she was locking a bedroom door, that meant someone else was in there. And if someone else was in there, why did she ask me to come over? And why the intense secrecy? My earlier ideas, a clogged pipe, a borrowed camera lens, vanished, replaced by much darker possibilities. I took a shaky breath and decided to risk it. I lifted my hand and scraped my fingernail lightly, once, against the wooden door. A signal. Not a knock, just a faint scratch. Almost immediately, the main lock on the front door rotated, slow and deliberate, and the door opened inward just a crack, maybe 3 inches wide. Chloe's eye peered out at me through the gap. She looked completely different than the guarded art student I knew. Her hair was messy, sticking up in places, and she was wearing a massive, oversized gray sweatshirt that looked like she'd just grabbed it off the floor. Her face was pale, drawn tight with something I couldn't immediately identify. Was it fear? Anger? Maybe just exhaustion? She didn't say hello. She didn't even acknowledge the lateness of the hour. Her voice was barely a whisper, a dry rustle of air. "Thank God. Get in. Now." She pulled the door open just wide enough for me to slip through, and the moment I was inside, she slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt and the chain on instantly. The entire apartment was almost pitch black, lit only by the faint, icy blue glow coming from a window facing the streetlights. I stood there, eyes struggling to adjust, feeling like a complete trespasser. The air in her apartment felt thick and strange, heavily scented with something smoky and metallic, not quite right. "What is going on, Chloe? Is Alex okay?" I whispered, my heart rate spiking again. She shook her head sharply, silencing me. She didn't look at me. She was scanning the room behind her, her gaze darting toward a hallway leading to the bedrooms. That's when I noticed it. Lying on the floor next to her worn-out backpack was a dark, leather-bound wallet. It wasn't Chloe's. It definitely wasn't Alex's. It was a man's wallet, bulky and expensive-looking, and it was open. Before I could even ask her whose it was, her eyes finally landed on mine, and whatever was in them made me forget the wallet, forget the darkness, forget the locked bedroom door. It was a look of pure, desperate plea. "You need to hide this," she breathed out, her hand shooting out to grab my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You need to take it downstairs and hide it right now before he finds out it's gone." My mind was running 1,000 miles an hour, desperately trying to process the demand. Hide what? The wallet? And who was he? The owner of the wallet? The person locked in the bedroom? The whole situation had spiraled from a strange text into something deeply criminal or deeply personal, and I was holding the bag, literally. "Who is he, Chloe? What is that?" I asked, pointing a trembling finger at the open wallet on the floor. My whisper was ragged. She didn't answer. Her panic was now contagious. She stooped down, scooped up the wallet, and shoved it hard into my hand. It was heavy, packed with cards and what felt like a thick stack of cash. The leather felt expensive and cold. Don't say his name. Don't look at anything inside it. Just go, she urged, pushing me toward the front door I'd just entered. He has no idea you're here, and he can't know. If he realizes that wallet is missing and that you were here. Her voice trailed off, but her eyes finished the sentence. It would be bad. I took a step toward the door, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against the wallet in my hand. But a sudden, gut-level feeling of self-preservation stopped me. I was being used. I was being asked to carry evidence of a situation I didn't understand, possibly incriminating myself. No, I need to know why, I insisted, digging my heels in. This is too much, Chloe. Tell me what's going on. Is he hurting you? Should I call the police? The word police hit her like a physical blow. She seized my wrist again, her eyes wide with frantic urgency. No, never the police. They will make it worse. You don't understand. This is Alex's fault. That stopped me cold. Alex? What did my sleeping, pizza-eating roommate have to do with a man's expensive wallet and a locked door 2 floors up? Before I could interrogate her, before I could ask how Alex could possibly be involved in whatever dark drama was unfolding in her living room, we both froze. From the quiet hallway, the one leading to the locked bedroom door, we heard a sound. It wasn't the lock clicking again, or a floorboard creaking. It was a throat being cleared, a deep, deliberate, masculine sound, followed by the faint scrape of a chair moving across the wooden floor. He was awake. He was out of the room. Chloe's face went from pale to ghostly white. She pushed me violently against the front door, her voice a desperate, terrified hiss. He's coming. Go. Now. Get out. I scrambled for the doorknob, the heavy wallet still clutched in my hand, my fingers fumbling with the chain lock. Just as I finally got the lock undone, and just as I felt the cold air from the hallway hit my face, a deep, smooth voice echoed from the darkness behind her. Chloe? Who was that at the door? She whipped around, putting her body between me and the hallway, obscuring my escape. I pressed my back against the wall, paralyzed. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and I was holding the one thing that could send this whole situation exploding. I waited for her to lie, to tell him it was nothing. But the words that came out of her mouth weren't a lie. They were a sudden, stunning piece of truth that explained why she had texted me, and why she was willing to sacrifice Alex to cover her tracks. She looked directly into the shadow looming at the end of the hall, and said, her voice shaking, "It was no one, honey. It was just Alex, looking for his share of the delivery. It was just Alex, looking for his share of the delivery." My blood ran cold. Alex? Delivery? The expensive, cash-stuffed wallet in my hand suddenly felt like a ticking time bomb. I stared at Chloe's back, a wave of sickening comprehension washing over me. She wasn't just hiding a boyfriend or a petty secret. She was clearly involved in something illegal, a delivery that likely involved the cash in the wallet. And now, she'd just implicated her little brother, my best friend, to cover her tracks and protect me. The figure in the doorway took a slow step forward, emerging slightly from the gloom. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing, and his face was impassive, calculating. He wasn't the monster I had imagined, but the kind of guy who commanded attention without raising his voice. He glanced past Chloe toward the door I was pressed against. "Alex is here?" the man asked, his voice low and dangerous, carrying zero warmth. "He knows better than to come here after 1 a.m., especially on a school night. Let's make sure he didn't leave anything." And that was the terrifying twist. The man wasn't satisfied with Chloe's quick lie. He wasn't going to check the front door to see if I was gone. Instead, he took another step toward the living room, heading directly toward a small, locked metal safe I now saw tucked away behind a stack of photography equipment. It wasn't about the wallet at all. The man was checking the safe to confirm the contents of the delivery were still there ***. If Alex was supposed to have his share, and the safe was now open, the man would realize instantly that the money, and whatever else was exchanged, was compromised, and the blame would fall squarely on the last person he saw, Chloe. I was holding the key to the entire operation, and I had only seconds before he discovered the real reason she was so panicked. The man, whom I now mentally labeled the enforcer, moved with an unnerving, almost lazy confidence toward the metal safe. Chloe was frozen, her lie about Alex failing to buy her the time she desperately needed. She looked back at me, her eyes pleading one last time. It was a clear choice. Let him open the safe and discover the missing delivery, which would undoubtedly result in serious consequences for her and possibly Alex. Or intervene now and throw everything into chaos. I made my decision. The heavy wallet still felt like a block of ice in my grip. Just as the enforcer reached the safe and knelt down, his fingers reaching for the dial, I slammed the heavy front door shut again, hard. The unexpected, loud noise in the silent apartment was deafening. Both Chloe and the enforcer spun around, startled. "Alex," I yelled, throwing my voice just past Chloe, making it sound like I was still standing outside the door, frustrated. "You seriously forgot your backpack again? You are going to fail this exam." It was a clumsy, desperate performance, but the noise and the sudden, angry tone broke the tension. The enforcer straightened up, momentarily distracted. "It wasn't Alex, Chloe. It was him," he said, his voice dropping an octave. Finally looking directly at me, the stranger pressed against the door. His eyes, now focused, were terrifyingly sharp. In that single, perfect moment of distraction, Chloe saw her chance. She didn't hesitate. She didn't try to explain or apologize. She charged, not at the enforcer, but toward the window. In 2 steps, she was there. She wrenched the latch open, shoved the screen aside, and then, in the most breathtaking, unbelievable move I had ever witnessed, she vaulted over the windowsill and dropped out of sight. The enforcer roared, a sound of pure fury and betrayal, and sprinted to the open window. He leaned out, scanning the fire escape or whatever route she'd taken. He never saw it coming. As he was distracted, I didn't run. Instead, I moved quickly past the safe and closer to the hallway where the man had emerged. The door to the other bedroom, the one that wasn't locked, was slightly ajar. I glanced inside. The room was Spartan, a cheap desk, a bed, a half-empty suitcase on the floor. But on the desk, placed neatly under a heavy book, was an SD card. It was the only thing of value in the whole room, and it was obviously planted there for a reason. I snatched it. The enforcer turned back, having realized Chloe was gone. His eyes landed on me, and then on the door I was standing next to. He wasn't looking at the front exit anymore. He was looking at the unlocked, empty room. "What did you see in there?" he demanded, taking a predatory step toward me. I held up the heavy wallet, the one thing he thought I was hiding. "I don't know who you are, but you left this here," I said, dropping it onto the floor with a heavy thud, cash spilling out. "But if you're looking for Chloe, she didn't leave empty-handed. She took this." I held up the SD card. The enforcer stopped dead, his face losing all color. He realized the money was just bait. The real delivery was the information. But the final twist wasn't that the SD card was the prize. The truly terrifying realization came when the enforcer looked at the card in my hand, then at the unlocked bedroom door, and then back at me, a horrible suspicion dawning in his eyes. He didn't know who I was, but he knew the truth of that room. "That wasn't Chloe's room," he stated, his voice flat. "That was Alex's room." "That wasn't Chloe's room," the enforcer repeated, the realization hitting him like a punch. "That was Alex's room." The world tilted. The room I had just snatched the SD card from, the one with the cheap desk and the half-empty suitcase, wasn't Chloe's spare room. It was my roommate Alex's actual bedroom, cleaned out and prepared for a quick exit. The truth solidified into something monstrous. Chloe hadn't texted me to protect Alex. She had texted me because Alex was already gone. He had arranged the whole delivery, taken his cut, the contents missing from the safe, and left, setting up his older sister to take the fall and giving her the impossible task of covering his tracks, using my unsuspecting presence as a final distraction. Alex, my quiet, pizza-eating anchor, was the one who had disappeared into the night, leaving a trail of chaos and his own sister behind. I didn't wait for the enforcer to process this new, damning information. I dropped the SD card next to the wallet, turned, and yanked the door open. I flew down the 2 flights of stairs, my feet barely touching the ground. When I burst into our apartment, Alex was still there, completely oblivious, curled up asleep on the couch. It took me 5 minutes of shaking him awake to get a response. He blinked at me, confused, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "What? Did I miss the exam? You left Chloe with a guy who was looking for an SD card in your room," I hissed, pushing him off the couch. "Why are you still here? And where is your suitcase?" He looked genuinely confused, and then suddenly, he looked terrified. "What are you talking about?" I haven't seen Chloe since Sunday. And my suitcase is right there. He pointed toward the closet. I opened the closet. The suitcase was there. His backpack was full. His room was a mess, just as it always was. There was no clean desk, no empty drawer. The truth, the final, painful truth, was that I hadn't been in Alex's room at all. In the frantic, dark confusion, the enforcer, seeing the doors slightly ajar and the travel items inside, had only assumed it was Alex's room, or maybe the spare room reserved for Alex's use, if he was truly gone. Chloe hadn't sacrificed Alex. She had sacrificed the idea of Alex, letting the enforcer believe her brother was the one who had run, giving her a precious few seconds to escape. She had trusted me, a near stranger, to be the chaos agent, the one who would show up and make enough noise to secure her exit. I never saw Chloe again. The next day, Alex's landlord was knocking on her door, her apartment cleared out, her rent paid in full for the next 6 months, another meticulously planned move. I never told Alex the full story, only that she had a scary encounter and had to leave town fast. He was heartbroken, but he never pressed it. I kept the secret of the text. I kept the memory of her face that night. Not the face of a cold manipulator, but the desperate face of someone fighting for their life. She used me, yes, but she didn't expose me, and she didn't truly betray her brother. She just chose her survival over his reputation. That single night changed how I saw everyone. It taught me that the quiet people in your life, the ones who barely register, are often the ones carrying the biggest, most unbelievable secrets. It taught me that a person's life isn't defined by the 5 words you exchange in a week, but by the one text message you receive in the dead of night. Chloe, the ghost, became a constant, thought-provoking shadow in my mind. She was the storm that came and went, leaving the air clear but the foundations irrevocably shaken. And the SD card? I left it on the floor, next to the money. I had no idea what was on it. I didn't want to know. I knew, though, that whatever information it held, it was exactly what Chloe had needed to buy her freedom. Sometimes, the most meaningful thing you can do for someone is simply to hold the door open for their escape. But I still wonder, late at night, when the phone buzzes in the dark, did she ever think about that night? Did she ever wonder if I'd checked the safe and realized she'd left something behind just for me? Something more personal than an SD card or a lie? Because when I finally cleaned out my own desk, a week later, I found a small, crinkled photograph slipped beneath my economics textbook. It was a picture of Alex and me, laughing over a pizza, a photo I didn't even know she'd taken. On the back, in faint handwriting, were 2 words, "Be safe."